The sun is shining, the birds are chirping, the bacon is sizzling. Welcome to the Daily Swole.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 75 of the Daily Mother Swole. Today, I wanted to build upon some more ab work. I'm getting a lot of questions about abs, getting a lot of questions about back, I'm getting a lot of questions about core strength. So I want to talk a little bit about core risk and reward, risk versus reward. In other words, some of the benefits that you'll get from core training and where that benefit or where that hard work or effort can start to fade into a little bit more in the risk category. Now, there are some exercises that I classically demonize, and I'll get into more of those more detail coming up in the next week or two. But there's a lot of other exercises where you can, or those exercises that you can actually do them, but the problem is I can't sit here and just say, hey, they're good. They're more overwhelmingly bad and more risky just because I can't be there to explain it. I'll have to go into some extreme breakdown, but a lot of the times the machines or the setup is just very risky for most people. Now, one of the most important things about the core is to understand what that is. And I talked about the core yesterday. We're talking about abs. The core is the pelvis all the way up to the cervical spine. So you have a large portion of your body that's actually the core. Your arms and legs are the only thing that's not the core, essentially. So you have the center of your body, which is the core, like the core of the apple, and then you have everything that branches off. So you have different parts of the core. You have different parts of the core. You have the upper back, you have the cervical spine, you have the lower back, and you have the hips being the base of the core, the base of the pyramid. When you're starting off, one of the most important things I always talk about is proper alignment and proper stacking, proper, alignment of the posture of the skeletal system. Because if you're already out of alignment, and the problem with a lot of people doing, let's say, back extensions, crunches on the floor, or some of these, crazy, exaggerated abdominal exercises, or core exercise, the person's body is already out of position. So when you're doing movement exercises and the body is already out of the position that it should be in naturally from a stabilization standpoint, you are adding torque, you are adding stress, you're adding tension to an area that is already imbalanced, that is not structurally sound already, okay? I just got a question on Periscope, is this guy jacked? Okay, so I have to take a pause and give a little flex right there. So the answer is yes. The answer is yes. Yes, he's the Swole King. That's right. That's right, Sassy McTits. That's right. That was a good little intermission. That was a break. I just noticed I had the corner of my eye and I had to address it. That actually had to be dealt with once and for all. So yeah, being the Swole King, it's important to be swole, but to be balanced in swole as well. So always talking about, before we start getting into in the next couple episodes, because I really want to do more of a core series. I feel like everyone wants to know more about the core, more about the midsection. Again, like I said, the core is from the pelvis all the way up to the cervical spine. So the core is everything except your freaking head and your legs and arms. Everything else is the core. Everything else is connected. Everything's connected anyway with the fascial system. But when it comes to sit-ups, when it comes to crunches, when it comes to the back extensions, those, I posted on Snapchat, when you're hanging off the edge of the Roman chair and swinging up and down. Even those, it's possible to do those properly. It's possible to do those with lower risk. There's still a higher risk exercise, but it comes down to, is your body in proper position to begin with? So before we move forward with other daily swoles, before I move forward in the next couple days with extra information, I need to make it exceptionally clear that your body needs proper alignment. On my YouTube channel, I know I keep referring to it because there's great information already. In the exercise section, there's the single leg squat, there's the plank, and there's also the hip bridge. Those exercises are designed specifically to isolate musculature that will help balance out the pelvis, that will help bring stability and a nice even seesaw effect to the core, to the base of the core, which are the glutes, the hips. I love hip bridges. I love heavy hip bridges. I love working the glutes, and I'm always talking about glutes during every exercise because they're the king of the jungle, because it's the most important muscle to be strong, because everything branches up above and below from the glutes. You create your power from the glutes. You create your stability from the core. If you have lower back problems chronically, you probably have hip instability. If you have knee problems chronically, you probably have hip instability. If you sit down a lot for work, if you drive in the car a lot for work, or you sit down just in general on the couch, chances are you have a lot of hip instability. And that hip instability means you probably have very tight muscles on the front of your hips, very tight hip flexors, and you have very weak glutes. Okay, your glutes get very weak, and that's why a lot of people pull their hamstrings all the time when they do training, when they do running, because their glutes are weak and their hamstrings start trying to do the work that the glutes should be doing. So when I talk about risk versus reward, there's a lot more risk than reward if you do not have proper alignment already. Anterior pelvic tilt, yep, you can call it anterior pelvic shift. And what that means is if you look at your pelvis, if you look at your hips, and you think of your hips as a bucket of water, if you pour water out the front, if you pour water out the front of your hips towards your stomach, if you pour water out the front of that bucket, you are getting an anterior tilt, and you'll notice that your lower back has to arch in order to tilt your pelvis that direction. Because of the anterior pelvic tilt, you put excessive extension in your lower back. You start putting excessive pressure on the discs that protect your lower lumbar, L5 and S1, L4 to L5, and so forth, all those lumbar discs that aren't designed to do extreme extension or flexion. And over time, that can compound and cause herniations, that can cause bulging discs, that can cause sciatic pain, that can cause neck pain, that can cause all different types of pain below and above that area. Okay? The lower back is designed to bend and to extend, not to rotate. And hyperextensions are exactly that. They're excessive extension and excessive flexion, and it puts unnecessary tension in the lower back. And 99.10% of people do back extensions on those hyperextension machines wrong. So I just cringe, and I really across the board just say, fucking don't do them, because chances are you're not doing them correctly, or you're imbalanced and you shouldn't be touching them. You could do great back extension work on the ground. Okay? Back extensions can be beneficial if you do them properly. You don't need weights. You have to be, it's an isolation exercise, and you have to be careful where you're putting the torque and where you're putting that pressure. And it's just a very dangerous exercise. And I'll have to try to get a video of how to do it properly or what to do with that, because most people do that wrong. And I just really don't like the exercise in general, just from all the injuries I've seen. And it's not really necessary. It can be okay if you do it perfectly, but in order to better strengthen those areas, deadlifts, squats, and other bar-related exercises where you're creating stability in the lower back rather than a lot of bending movement is better. So here's what I want you to take away from this episode today as we move forward, because I will be starting to break down other exercises. I do want to get a little bit more, I think a little bit more technical in terms of core training. I want to get a little bit more into the nitty gritty of what you're all asking. I'm getting a lot of good questions. I got actually, ironically, a few questions about back extensions yesterday and the day before. I'm getting a lot of great feedback from this core strength series, and when I do talks and daily swells about core strength and the core, which obviously a lot of people always worry about and concerned about. So again, it comes down to proper nutrition, lifting heavy weights all over the body, and working on flattening the stomach and balancing out the pelvis, because your posture is going to affect what your core looks like in terms of flat or bulging just as much as strengthening and having abdominal muscles, okay? The combination is the holy grail, but just working on strength and bending all the time when you have improper alignment of your spine will cause you pain. Chances are, very likely, risk versus reward, a high risk of pain in the long run. So I will stay for a few minutes after on Periscope and Busker to answer a couple questions. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 75 of The Daily Swole, talking about the core. There's more to come. I encourage all of you to send me messages on Snapchat, to send me a DM on Instagram, any of my social media platforms. If you have a question, if it's something you would like to see on The Daily Swole, please hit up Papa Bear, let me know, because I love addressing individual issues, because chances are if you have a question or it's something that interests you, it will interest 5, 10, 50, 100 other people that are watching these shows. So thank you again for joining. Thank you for the interest, and thank you for taking the time to make some sick fucking gains on a Wednesday. I'll see you tomorrow for episode 76 of The Daily Swole. Peace.